It was supposed to be a day of unity, a day when the leaders of the galaxy would come together and strengthen the fragile bonds that held their worlds in harmony. Earth had been invited to the galactic capital for talks that would set the stage for peace in the years to come, but everything changed. In an instant, when the transmission came through, President Sophia Collins stared at the screen in disbelief. Her mind raced through every possibility as she tried to process what she had just heard. The Shirani, the fierce warrior race that Earth had fought alongside for decades, were under attack. Their homeworld was in ruins, and the worst part of it all was that the Galactic Council had abandoned them. The Council, the very body that was supposed to protect peace and order in the galaxy, had turned its back on one of its most loyal allies. Earth had always been a relatively minor player in galactic politics, but they were respected for their neutrality and their sense of honor. But this betrayal, this cruel twist of fate, could not be ignored. President Collins made a decision. She would not wait for the Council to act. She would not watch as an entire civilization was wiped out because of political games. She quickly summoned her top advisors and military commanders as panic spread through the halls of Earth's government. Something had to be done, and Earth would not stand idly by while an entire race was erased from existence. Admiral Isaac Hayes stood at attention in the war room, his face grim and determined. He had fought in many conflicts, but never had he faced a situation like this. Earth's fleet was small compared to the mighty forces of the Galactic Council and the Zerax, but it was capable. Its ships were more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen, built with technology recovered from ancient alien relics and enhanced with humanity's relentless drive for innovation. They were not a force to be underestimated. Collins turned to Hayes with a look of fierce resolve and a voice that rang with conviction. "We will defend the Shirani, we will take the fight to the Zerax, and we will make them regret ever crossing our allies." Her words echoed in the room that was filled with military leaders and intelligence officers who had always known that Earth's role in galactic affairs was secondary. But now it was clear Earth was no longer going to sit on the sidelines. The galaxy would have to reckon with them now. The Council had betrayed the Shirani not because they were weak, but because they were too strong, too proud, and the Council had feared their growing influence in the galaxy. The Zerax knew this and used it to their advantage. They struck when the Shirani were most vulnerable, and now Earth had no choice but to rise to the challenge. In a matter of hours, Earth's fleet began its preparations for war. They had no time to waste. The Shirani were counting on them, but the stakes were higher than anyone could imagine. Earth's ships would need to be faster than ever before, more accurate and lethal than ever before. The Zerax were not a race to be underestimated. They had slaughtered countless civilizations, and their tactics were ruthless. But Earth had something the Zerax and the Galactic Council did not understand: the will to fight for what was right, the fire that burned within their hearts, and the understanding that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity would never back down. As the fleet powered up and prepared for their journey into the heart of enemy space, a new chapter in Earth's history was about to be written, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Earth's fleet was ready to launch, but before the first ship could leave Earth's orbit, something far more dangerous had to be dealt with: the truth, the raw truth that would shatter everything the galaxy thought they knew about the Galactic Council. President Collins sat in her office, staring at the data that had just come through. Earth's intelligence had cracked the code of the Council's hidden communications, and what they found was something she never thought possible. The Shirani were not simply abandoned, they were betrayed for something far more sinister. The Shirani had been a powerful force in the galaxy, but their strength had been seen as a threat by the Council. When they rose too quickly in political influence, the Council decided it was time to cut them down before they could gain more power, but they could not afford to destroy the Shirani outright, not yet anyway. No, the Council had quietly negotiated with the Zerax, a ruthless enemy whose expansion had already claimed countless worlds. The Zerax promised to divert their attention toward Earth's allies in exchange for political and military influence, and in return the Council would turn a blind eye to their actions. The Shirani's fate was sealed the moment the Council made the deal. They were a tool, a pawn to be sacrificed for the greater good of the Council's ambitions. Collins slammed her fist on the desk, the anger within her building with every word she read. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was an act of pure corruption and manipulation. Earth's allies had been slaughtered so the Council could maintain their fragile balance of power. Collins could barely breathe through the rising fury. She had to stop this. She had to make the galaxy see the truth. But how could they possibly believe it when the very entity meant to protect them was the one pulling the strings? At that moment, Admiral Hayes walked in without knocking, his face grim, the weariness of years of service visible in his eyes. But something else burned within them. Now something new, something dangerous. Collins looked up from the data, her voice sharp. "We have to expose the Council," she said, her eyes locked onto his. Hayes gave a single nod, knowing what was about to unfold. He understood that this would not be an easy fight, but Earth had no choice. They would go to war for the Shirani and for the galaxy's future. The first move would be to send a message to the galaxy, one that could not be ignored, but it had to be calculated and precise. The truth about the Council's betrayal would shake the foundation of the entire galaxy. The Council's power relied on their ability to manipulate the truth, and now they had lost control of it. Across Earth's command centers, the fleet began to organize their attack plans. The ships that had been assembled were more than just technologically superior. They were symbols of a new force in the galaxy, humanity's refusal to accept what they were told and instead fight for what was right. Each warship was built with years of research and design, every weapon system tuned to perfection. But it wasn't just the technology that made Earth's fleet powerful, it was the people behind it, soldiers, engineers, and scientists, all working together toward a single goal: to protect their friends, to deliver vengeance for those they had lost. Collins turned to her communications officer as a plan began to form. Their first task would be simple. They would make their move on the Zerax fleets and hit them where they least expected it. The Council had underestimated Earth before, and they would do so again. But this time they would not make it out unscathed. This time humanity was in charge. As Earth's warships began to power up and make their way toward the Shirani's war-torn homeworld, Collins knew that the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again, and she intended to make sure of it. But first, they had to bring the truth to light and show the universe that humanity was not afraid to stand up for the helpless, even when no one else would. The decision had been made. Earth was no longer a passive observer in the galactic political game. The betrayal of the Shirani had pushed them past the point of no return. President Collins had spoken to her generals, her advisors, and the military leaders. There was no turning back now. The only path forward was to strike back and make the galaxy understand that humanity would not stand by while their allies were slaughtered. Earth would respond swiftly, but they would do it on their own terms. In the deep shadows of Earth's military facilities, the true scale of their response was hidden. The fleet that would soon set out to deliver vengeance was not made of the large warships that many expected. No, Earth's fleet was built on stealth, precision, and unmatched speed. For years, Earth had been working in secrecy, creating ships with technologies scavenged from ancient alien ruins, combining them with their own innovations. What emerged was a fleet so advanced that even the best galactic intelligence agencies could not predict what was coming. Admiral Isaac Hayes stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, the flagship of Earth's stealth fleet, looking out at the sleek, near-invisible warships docked in the spaceport. Their dark, shimmering hulls reflected the stars around them, like shadows that blended perfectly with the darkness of space. The fleet was small, only a dozen ships in total, but they were more than enough to carry out the mission. These ships could move faster than anything the Zerax had ever seen, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible, even to the most sophisticated detection systems. Hayes had seen humanity face challenges before: small skirmishes, planetary defenses, even some galactic feuds. But this was different. This was an existential battle, not just for the Shirani, but for Earth's place in the galaxy. The stakes were higher than ever. If they lost, there would be no coming back. The galaxy would think of Earth as weak, a relic of a bygone era, a species that could be wiped out without a second thought. But Hayes was not afraid. Earth had something the rest of the galaxy didn't understand, something they couldn't replicate: the unyielding will to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. That determination was the core of Earth's strength, and he knew it would carry them through this. President Collins had given the order for the fleet to remain under the radar, to avoid the Council's prying eyes until they were ready to strike. They couldn't afford to have their plans discovered before the first move was made. The Ziracs, with their overwhelming numbers, would never expect a small fleet of Earth warships to challenge them. And that was exactly how they would win, by exploiting their enemies' overconfidence and using their superior speed and tactics to strike where the Ziracs least expected it. The first destination, the Ziracs' command outpost, a heavily fortified station located just outside Shirani space. It was here that the Ziracs had coordinated the destruction of the Shirani's homeworld, and it would be here that Earth would deliver their message. Earth's fleet moved quietly through the vast expanse of space, unseen, unnoticed, until they were right on top of their target. They would strike quickly, overwhelm the defenses with precision strikes, and disable the Ziracs forces before they even knew what hit them. As the fleet moved toward their objective, tension buzzed through the ranks. The crew members were ready. They had trained for this moment for years, but none of them knew what lay ahead. This was the first step in humanity's new role in the galaxy. They would no longer be passive observers. They would fight for their allies, and they would fight for their own survival. With a final glance at the horizon of stars ahead, Hayes spoke the words that would set everything in motion. Prepare for launch. Let's show them what humanity is capable of. And with that, Earth's stealth fleet moved into the darkness of space, ready to strike back against the Ziracs and the Council that had betrayed their allies. The void of space stretched endlessly, a vast, silent expanse. The Earth fleet moved like shadows, their advanced cloaking systems making them nearly invisible to all but the most specialized sensors. As they neared the outskirts of the Shirani homeworld, the horror of what had already transpired became clear. The once proud planet was now a smoldering ruin, its cities reduced to ash. What had once been a thriving hub of culture and strength was now a battlefield, one where Earth's closest allies were fighting for their very survival against a far superior enemy. Admiral Hayes stood on the command deck of the Phoenix, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the planet below. It was a grim sight. The Shirani were fierce warriors, but they had been caught off guard by the sudden assault of the Ziracs, and despite their best efforts, they had been unable to hold back the overwhelming tide of invaders. "Admiral, the Ziracs fleet has set up a blockade around the planet," came the voice of Commander Leah Grant, the tactical officer. Her eyes were fixed on her console, her face a picture of concentration. "They've got superior firepower, but we can still slip through their defenses if we time it right." "We don't have time for subtlety, Commander," Hayes replied, his voice cold and steady. "We go in hard and fast. We strike at their weakest points, disable their communications, and make sure the Shirani get the reinforcements they need." The fleet had only one advantage: speed. The Ziracs might have the numbers and the firepower, but Earth's ships could strike with the precision of a surgical blade, bypassing their enemies' defenses before they had a chance to react. The key was to hit them where it hurt, to disrupt their command structure and sow confusion among their ranks. Hayes took a deep breath, his mind already running through the battle plans. This wasn't just about delivering vengeance. It was about saving the Shirani, about proving to the galaxy that Earth could not be underestimated. If they failed here, the Ziracs would move on to other planets, other races, until the galaxy would be nothing more than a series of broken worlds. No, Earth had to win. For the Shirani, for their own survival, and for the future of the galaxy. "Launch the first wave," Hayes ordered, his voice cutting through the tense silence on the bridge. "Strike hard and fast. We're going in." In an instant, the Earth fleet broke formation and shot forward, their cloaking systems disengaging as they plunged into the heart of the battle. The Ziracs were caught off guard. Their sensors had not detected the Earth ships until it was far too late. The first wave of Earth ships tore through the enemy's outer defenses, their weapons flashing with deadly precision. The Zirax scrambled to regroup, sending their warships into position to counter the surprise attack. The Phoenix and its companions danced around enemy fire, their speed making them nearly impossible to hit. Earth's advanced shields absorbed the initial hits, while their own weapons, laser cannons, torpedoes, and plasma bursts, rained down on the Zirax ships with deadly accuracy. Explosions erupted in space, their fiery trails lighting up the darkness of the battlefield. At the same time, a smaller group of Earth ships broke off from the main force, sneaking behind the Zirax blockade to infiltrate their command station. This was the heart of the operation, disrupting the enemy's command and control. If the Zirax could no longer coordinate their forces, their massive fleet would fall into chaos. On the surface of the Shirani homeworld, the remaining Shirani warriors rallied, their morale bolstered by the sudden appearance of Earth's fleet. They had been fighting alone for too long. And now, with the humans at their side, they had a renewed sense of hope. The tides were turning. "We've got this," Commander Grant said, watching as the Zirax ships scrambled in panic on the tactical display. "They're disorganized. We've got them right where we want them." "Don't get cocky, Commander," Hayes replied, his gaze never leaving the screen. "We need to make sure they stay disorganized. Keep pushing forward. Every second counts." The Earth fleet continued its relentless assault, cutting through the Zirax defenses with a ferocity that shocked their enemies. The Zirax had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and fight back. They had assumed the humans would cower, too weak to stand up to their power. But Earth was proving them wrong. And with every ship that fell to Earth's firepower, the Zirax began to realize that they had made a grave mistake. As the Phoenix led the final push toward the Zirax command station, Admiral Hayes allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The tide had turned. This battle was only the beginning, but it was a victory that would send ripples across the galaxy and show the Council and the Zirax that humanity would no longer be pushed around. The void of space had become a chaotic battlefield, lit up by the constant flash of explosions and the eerie glow of plasma fire. Earth's fleet moved with precision, their ships striking with deadly accuracy at the Zirax forces. The once overconfident enemy now scrambled to regroup, but it was clear they were fighting a losing battle. The Zirax, known for their brutal military strategies and overwhelming numbers, had met an opponent they hadn't anticipated. Earth's unmatched speed, innovation, and resolve. Admiral Hayes watched the battle unfold on the command deck of the Phoenix, his face grim but determined. The first wave had been a success, but this was just the beginning. The Zirax were resilient, and Earth could not afford to grow complacent. Every move had to be calculated, every strike decisive. "Admiral, we've broken through their outer defense lines," Commander Leah Grant reported, her voice tinged with excitement. "Their communications are in disarray, and we've crippled a significant portion of their fleet. They're in chaos." "Good," Hayes replied, eyes narrowing as he reviewed the tactical display. "Now we finish it. We need to send a message that the Zirax will never forget." But despite the apparent victory, there was something in the air, an unease that lingered. The Zirax were reeling, but they were not retreating. Instead, they had regrouped, pulling their remaining ships into a defensive formation around their command station. It was a last-ditch effort, a desperate maneuver to protect their leadership. "Admiral, we've detected a massive energy spike," came the voice of Lieutenant Marcus Steele, Earth's chief engineer. "The Zirax are powering up something big. It's not a weapon we've encountered before, but it's powerful enough to cause significant damage to our fleet." Hayes stiffened. The Zirax had one final trick up their sleeve, and if they managed to unleash it, the Earth fleet could be in serious trouble. He quickly made the decision that had to be made. There was no time to waste. "All ships, break off and engage their command station immediately," he commanded. "We need to take down their leadership before they can fire whatever they've got. Full speed ahead." The fleet responded instantly, breaking formation and heading straight for the Zarax command station. It was a massive structure, bristling with weapons and defensive shields, but it was also the heart of their operation. Without it, the Zarax would fall into disarray, and the remaining fleet would be scattered and ineffective. As Earth's warships moved forward, dodging the remaining Zarax fire, the tension reached a boiling point. The Phoenix led the charge, its sleek hull cutting through the space between the Earth fleet and the enemy station. Behind it, the other ships followed suit, each vessel using its advanced cloaking systems to slip past the enemy's defensive perimeter. "This is it," Hayes muttered to himself, his voice steady, but filled with the weight of what was about to unfold. "We hit them fast and hard." Then it happened. The Zarax fired their weapon, an energy beam so intense it lit up the dark expanse of space like a second sun. The beam collided with the nearest Earth warship, its shields flickering and collapsing under the force. The ship was torn apart in an instant, debris scattering in all directions. The Earth fleet had lost a vessel, but the message was clear. The Zarax were not giving up without a fight. Hayes felt his heart skip a beat as he watched the destruction, but he did not falter. The Earth fleet would not let one loss slow them down. They pressed forward, their ships closing in on the Zarax command station with renewed fury. "Prepare for final assault," Hayes ordered, his voice cutting through the bridge like steel. "All remaining warships, target their central power core. Take it down. Now." The remaining Earth ships opened fire, their weapons striking the heart of the Zarax command station. The battle was far from over, but Earth had already done what seemed impossible. They had disrupted the Zarax leadership, and now it was only a matter of time before the rest of their fleet crumbled. As the battle raged on, the Shirani forces on the surface of their homeworld saw a sudden shift in the tide. The Earth fleet had broken through. They were no longer alone. The Shirani, bolstered by the arrival of their human allies, fought harder, their once wavering resolve now strengthened by the promise of victory. In the midst of the chaos, Hayes allowed himself a brief moment of triumph. The tide had turned. Earth's fleet had delivered a blow the Zarax never expected. But there was still much to be done. This was just the beginning. The galaxy would know that Earth would never back down. The battle for the Shirani homeworld was theirs to win, but the war had only just begun. The Zarax command station trembled under the assault. Explosions racked its hull, sending shockwaves through space that rippled across the battlefield. But despite the fury of Earth's onslaught, the Zarax were not backing down. Their forces, though disorganized, had rallied around their leadership. The heart of their military might was still beating, just barely. Admiral Hayes watched the action unfold on the command deck of the Phoenix, his expression unreadable. The Earth fleet had successfully pierced the Zarax's outer defenses and crippled their leadership. Yet the battle had taken a dark turn with the devastating beam weapon that had destroyed one of Earth's ships. Hayes could feel the weight of that loss. Each life mattered, but the war had only just begun. "Admiral, the Zarax are regrouping." Commander Leah Grant's voice broke through his thoughts. "They've pulled in the last of their reinforcements. It's going to be a bloodbath if we don't finish this." Hayes nodded, eyes narrowing. The Zarax were nothing if not persistent. He could see it in the way their remaining warships had formed a desperate defensive formation around their command station. They were playing for time, hoping to draw Earth's fleet into a prolonged fight. But Hayes wasn't going to give them that luxury. "Launch the final assault," he ordered, his voice hard. "We can't let them regroup. We end this now." The fleet's remaining warships surged forward, their weapons lighting up the dark expanse. Each ship, though smaller than the Zarax juggernauts, moved with unrelenting precision. Their advanced cloaking systems allowed them to get in close without being detected, and once in position, they unleashed their deadly payloads. The first wave of torpedoes exploded against the Zarax's outer defenses, sending massive ripples through their formation. The impact left a gaping hole in their ranks, but the Zarax quickly adjusted, trying to close the gap. In the confusion, Earth's ships slipped through, focusing their fire on the core of the Zerac's defensive grid. The battle waged fiercely. Laser fire crisscrossed space, ships from both sides twisting and dodging in a deadly dance. Every shot that hit Earth's warships sent jolts through the hulls, but their advanced shields absorbed the worst of the damage. Earth had designed these ships to withstand battles that would have shattered any other fleet in minutes. The Zeracs, on the other hand, had nothing to match that level of resilience. Their ships were bigger, more powerful, but not built to take the kind of punishment that Earth's ships could. In the heart of the battlefield, the Phoenix led the charge toward the Zerac's command station. Its engines roared as it shot forward, a harbinger of the destruction to come. The massive Zerac station loomed ahead, its defense systems flaring to life in a final futile attempt to stave off Earth's assault. "We're getting close to the core," Lieutenant Steele called out from engineering. "It's going to take a few more shots to break through their shields. But we've got this." "Make it count, Steele," Hayes responded sharply, hands gripping the rail as he stared at the massive station ahead of them. "We don't have much time before they can deploy that weapon again." In the distance, the Zerac's flagship, their largest and most heavily armed ship, began to turn toward the Phoenix, its weapon ports opening in preparation to fire. Hayes could see the flickering red glow of the weapon charging, the massive energy core building to devastating levels. "Brace for impact," Hayes shouted, his voice calm but urgent. "We can't let them fire that weapon. All ships target the flagship." In that moment, all the tension that had been building over the past few days boiled over. Earth's ships pressed forward, releasing a final barrage of fire that tore through the Zerac's flagship's shields. The enemy vessel shuddered violently as explosions tore through its hull, sending debris scattering in all directions. With the flagship disabled, the remaining Zerac ships were thrown into chaos. Their formations collapsed, and for the first time in the battle, their true vulnerability showed. Earth's warships, without hesitation, took full advantage of the opening. Within moments, the Zerac's once mighty fleet was in disarray, their remaining ships either fleeing or being destroyed in rapid succession. The Zerac's command station, its defenses weakened, was now vulnerable. The Phoenix closed in on it, its weapons charging for one final strike. Hayes braced himself, his knuckles white against the console as his ship locked onto the station's core. "Fire," he ordered. The final volley hit the command station directly, triggering an explosion so massive it sent a shockwave through the surrounding space. The command station was obliterated, its power core erupting in a brilliant flash of light. The Zerac's forces were leaderless, their communications severed, and the remnants of their fleet scattered. For a long moment, the silence that followed felt deafening. The battle was over. "We did it," Commander Grant said, her voice shaky but filled with awe. Hayes didn't respond immediately. His eyes remained on the wreckage of the Zerac's fleet. This victory had come at a cost. Earth had lost ships and lives. But the Shirani had been avenged, and the galaxy had learned a painful lesson. Earth was not a force to be taken lightly. "We did," Hayes said quietly, finally allowing himself a small bitter smile. "But we're not done yet. Not by a long shot." In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy's balance was shattered. The once proud Zerac's fleet was now in ruins, their leadership obliterated, and their forces scattered in disarray. The Shirani had been avenged, their homeworld saved, and Earth had solidified its place as a force to be reckoned with. But the victory came with a heavy price. Earth had lost several ships, and many brave souls had been sacrificed for the cause. Admiral Hayes stood at the command deck of the Phoenix, staring out at the remnants of the Zerac's fleet. The battle was over, but the war was far from it. The galaxy was watching, and Earth had just made an enemy of the most powerful political body in the galaxy, the Galactic Council. "They're going to come for us, Hayes." Commander Leah Grant's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood beside him, eyes fixed on the same view. "The Council won't let this slide. Not after everything we've done." Hayes nodded grimly. He'd been expecting this. though the weight of the reality hit him harder now. The Galactic Council had always prided itself on being the governing body of the galaxy. Their power was rooted in secrecy, manipulation, and control. The exposure of their betrayal of the Shirani was only the beginning. What they had done to Earth's allies, the lies they had spread, the manipulation, they would not allow it to go unpunished. "We've made an enemy of the most dangerous force in the galaxy," Hayes said, his voice low. "But we've also made allies. The Shirani will owe us their lives, and so will the others who have suffered under the Council's thumb. If the Council wants to come after us, they'll find that they're not the only ones who have something to lose." "I don't think the Council sees it that way, sir," Grant replied, her tone edged with concern. "They'll come at us with everything they've got. They'll twist the truth, label us rebels, and use their vast influence to turn the rest of the galaxy against us." "They can try," Hayes said with quiet determination. "But we've shown that we don't bow to threats. We'll face them head-on." Far from the battlefield, on the galactic capital world of Arcadia, the Council was already in motion. In their sleek, sterile chambers, the highest-ranking members of the Galactic Council met in a secret emergency session. The room was filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy, their faces grim as they debated the actions taken by Earth. "The humans have done the unthinkable," High Chancellor Mylanus of the Aquari said, his voice trembling with anger. "They've broken the delicate balance we've worked so hard to maintain. They've exposed us for what we truly are, the betrayal of the Shirani. An alliance we engineered in secrecy was never meant to reach the light of day. Earth has struck a fatal blow to our power." "Fatal? Hardly," said Juralus, a member of the Council's Security Directorate. "The humans are bold, yes, but they're not invincible. We'll send our forces to put them back in their place, as we always do. Once we have them neutralized, the galaxy will fall back into order." "That's not the issue," interrupted Sirius, a member of the diplomatic division. "The humans have stirred something else, something unexpected. We have the entire galaxy at our command, but we've underestimated them. The Shirani will not forget what happened, and there are others who may follow in Earth's footsteps. This could spiral into something we can't control." "The humans are a threat to the status quo," Mylanus said. "If we don't stamp them out, it could inspire others. Rebellion will spread, and we'll lose our grip on the galaxy. We need to act, and act quickly." A cold silence filled the room as the Council members exchanged glances. It was clear now. Earth had ignited a firestorm, and the Council could not allow that flame to spread. "We will not be the ones to back down," Juralus said, standing up from his seat. "The galaxy belongs to the Council, and it always will. Prepare the fleets. We are going to crush this rebellion before it spreads." As the meeting concluded, the Council's plan began to take shape. Earth had made its move, and now the full weight of the Galactic Council's wrath was about to descend upon them. The power structure of the galaxy was at risk, and the Council would stop at nothing to maintain control. Back on the Phoenix, Admiral Hayes stared at the stars ahead. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Council had its sights set on Earth now, and they would stop at nothing to crush the fledgling rebellion. But Hayes was resolute. Earth had made its stand, and they would not go down without a fight. "We've got the attention of the galaxy," Hayes said quietly, his voice full of resolve. "Now we'll make sure they remember what it means to challenge us." The war that Earth had ignited was far from over, and the enemy they now faced was unlike any they had ever encountered. The Galactic Council, a political powerhouse stretching across the galaxy, had just declared Earth a target. To the Council, Earth was an upstart, a rebellious, chaotic force that dared challenge their long-held dominance. But to Earth's people, this was no longer about survival. It was about defiance, about proving to the galaxy that their home would not be crushed under anyone's boot. On the Phoenix, Admiral Hayes stood in the heart of the ship's command center, a quiet storm in his eyes. They had just completed the first phase of the war. avenging the Shirani, delivering a crushing blow to the Zarax. But the galaxy's true fight was just beginning. "We've seen the reports, Admiral," Commander Grant said, standing by his side. "The Council's fleets are mobilizing. Word's already spread. Every system loyal to the Council will be on the move. It's not just about Earth anymore. It's about keeping this rebellion from spreading." Hayes turned his attention to the holographic map of the galaxy displayed before him. The once stable borders of the Council's influence were now shifting. The rebellion had begun to stir, fueled by Earth's defiance. Other worlds, worlds who had suffered under the Council's manipulation, were beginning to whisper, to rise. "They can't crush what they don't understand," Hayes muttered, a sense of resolve hardening in his chest. "We're not just a handful of rebels. We're the beginning of something bigger, and if the Council wants to make this a war, they'll have to face all of us. Are we ready?" Grant asked, her voice betraying her underlying concern. "Not yet," Hayes replied, his gaze hardening. "But we will be. We'll need the Shirani, and we'll need every ally we can gather. The Zarax may have fallen, but the Council's power runs deep. We can't afford to fight this alone." The doors to the command deck slid open, and Lieutenant Steele entered, looking tired but resolute. "Admiral, we've finished scanning their fleet movements. The Council's armada is much larger than we anticipated. If we're going to stand a chance, we need to consolidate forces and build a united front across the galaxy." Hayes nodded grimly. The Council's fleets, vast and well-equipped, were formidable. But their greatest strength was their unity. They operated like a machine, each part moving in perfect harmony. Earth, on the other hand, was an unpredictable force, capable of striking where they were least expected and operating with a kind of decentralized resistance that could spread like wildfire if they weren't careful. "You're right, Steele," Hayes said, running a hand over his face. "Our next step is to find every planet, every race willing to stand with us. We can't afford to be scattered, not when the Council's forces are mobilizing." As Hayes issued his orders, the crew of the Phoenix sprang into action. The mission ahead was one that would change the galaxy. The Zarax were only the first of many enemies that would stand in their way. But Earth wasn't alone anymore. They had proven that they could fight, that they could win. And now it was time to forge alliances that would make their resistance unstoppable. The next few days were filled with frantic communications, secret meetings, and high-stakes diplomacy. Earth's leadership reached out to every planet and race that had ever suffered under the Council's rule. The Shirani were the first to pledge their support, followed by a number of other worlds whose people had long felt the weight of the Council's oppression. Earth's actions had awakened something in the galaxy, a desire to be free of the Council's iron grip. As the weeks passed, the resistance grew. Rebel fleets began to form, scattered but determined, moving in the shadows to avoid the Council's ever-watchful eyes. The Phoenix became a symbol, a rallying point for those who sought freedom, for those who would no longer be cowed by the Council's power. And then, as the final phase of their plan began to take shape, Hayes stood once more on the bridge of the Phoenix, looking out at the stars. The war was far from over, but they were no longer alone. The galaxy had started to change. The seed of rebellion had been planted, and Earth, along with its new allies, was ready to see it through to the end. "We've started something bigger than any of us," Hayes said quietly, his voice firm. "This fight won't be easy, but it's the only fight worth fighting. We'll bring down the Council, and we'll do it together." The crew nodded in agreement. Earth had stood alone, but now they had sparked a movement. The galaxy was no longer under the Council's control. The dawn of defiance had arrived, and nothing would stop them.